Lunchtime News with Martine Croxall.
Good afternoon. President Trump has given Iran 48 hours to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to shipping, or says America will obliterate Iran's energy infrastructure. The threat comes as the Iranians struck 2 towns in Israel close to a nuclear facility, long believed to be the site of Israel's nuclear weapons. The Israel Defense Forces are warning Iran's missile capabilities could allow them to strike major European cities, including London, which is over 2,500 miles from Tehran, a claim dismissed this morning by Downing Street. Joe Inwood has the latest.
Even after 3 weeks of relentless bombardment, Iran is still able to strike back, it seems. That is certainly the message Iranian state media wants to get across. These images shared online show messages being written on the side of suicide drones and missiles before they are launched. And this is the result. Whoa! Dimona, in Israel's southern Negev desert, is just 8 miles from the country's main nuclear facility, thought to hold their undeclared arsenal. Israel said this attack was retaliation for a strike on one of its nuclear facilities. Also struck the nearby town of Arad, which was this morning visited by Israel's Prime Minister.
If you want proof that Iran endangers the entire world, the last 48 hours have given it. In the last 48 hours, Iran targeted a civilian area. They're doing that as a mass murder weapon. Luckily, no one was killed, but that's due to luck, not their intention.
But the attack on Dimona is not the only one that has begun to alter the calculus of this war. The news that Iran tried to strike this base with 2 ballistic missiles is noteworthy, not for the nature of the target, but for its location. Diego Garcia is in the Indian Ocean, 2,500 miles from the Iranian coast, and outside what was thought to be the range of Iran's missiles. That led to a top Israeli official saying European capitals were now at risk. It's something the UK government was keen to downplay.
I'm not aware of any assessment at all that they are even trying to target Europe, let alone that they could if they tried. But even if they did, we have the necessary military capability to defend this country, and defending the British national interest is precisely why we're taking part in collective defensive action across the Middle East.
But one area where the UK and other European nations are currently not involved is in the Strait of Hormuz, the key choke point to international shipping that Iran has successfully closed. That is already having a significant impact on the global economy, and one that will continue to grow. Last night, Donald Trump took to social media to say that if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the strait within 48 hours, he would obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first.
Trump faces two choices. He either doubles down, escalates, and launches an operation to topple the regime. And you're not going to do that without an extraordinary, massive land force marching on Tehran, which I think is inconceivable. The other alternative is Trump says, I've declared victory, I'm going to walk away from this. But that's not going to fool anyone. Trump will be humiliated in doing so, because the Iranian regime will be in place, and the reasons for which he went to war will not necessarily have been achieved.
All the while, the human cost continues to grow. In Lebanon, more than 1 million people have now been forced from their homes by this war, which shows no sign of ending. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Our political correspondent Jack Fenwick is here. Jack, Number 10 are insisting that the UK is not going to get drawn into this war any further. But isn't there a danger of mission creep?
I do detect a sense of nervousness inside government about that perception day after day. Ministers insist that the UK is not getting dragged in. We heard that message again from Steve Reid this morning. But of course it is the case that Iran has said the UK is a player in this. We know they targeted that British base. We're likely to hear more about British military efforts to take down drones. Ministers are still considering what help they may be able to give in reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Of course, what the government means means by not getting dragged in is that they want to stick to so-called defensive operations, but they haven't made it clear quite what the distinction between defensive and offensive is. Pretty much all of the opposition parties in Westminster now believe that, contrary to what the government says, the UK is getting further dragged into this, and that's a question that's going to be repeatedly asked of ministers in the coming days.
Jack, for the moment. Thank you very much, Jack Fenwick. The Prime Minister will meet the Governor of the Bank of England this week to discuss if anything more can be done to tackle the rising cost of living caused by the war with Iran. With people already feeling the impact of the petrol pumps and food inflation likely to rise, Esselt Carr has been looking at the energy policy options available to tackle rising bills.
Petrol, now almost 12 pence per litre higher than before the conflict began. Diesel is up by double that. The hit on households is already taking effect. Now there's pressure on the government to set out if and how it will step in. Today, their cost of living champion, supermarket boss Lord Richard Walker, said in his role as an advisor to Keir Starmer, he was calling for a cap on the profits of energy companies, who benefit, he said, while pressures on bills rise. Government sources indicated this wasn't something being considered, but Housing Secretary Steve Reed said it was ready to take action where it was needed.
We're monitoring this, believe me, hour by hour, and as intervention is required, the government is making appropriate interventions, but we're already focusing on keeping bills down.
The Energy Profits Levy, a windfall tax introduced in 2022, means companies pay an overall tax rate on profits of 78%. The boss of Centrica, which owns British Gas, said that was already a significant hit for those firms.
4/5 of what's made goes to the government, and that still stays in place for oil and gas production in the UK and for some electricity production as well. So if you've got a situation where the exchequer takes 4/5 of what you're making, I'm not sure there's much more room for manoeuvre.
There have been calls from the Conservatives and Reform UK for the government to boost energy supplies with more oil and gas exploration in the North Sea, an idea backed by the Centrica boss.
I do think that we should look at producing the resources that we've got ourselves. It's not a silver bullet. Rough's not a silver bullet. Nothing in and of itself will fix this. But these activities will bring prices down.
The Conservatives called for action on bills too.
What I'd like to see is British people taxed less. A huge chunk of their bills are because of taxes, particularly green levies. We are advocating a reducing of the amount of money that the government adds to those bills. Let's start off with that. Let's also make sure we are better utilising our own oil and gas capability so that we are not reliant so heavily on imported energy sources.
An emergency meeting's due to be held tomorrow, where the government will consider all its options for protecting households from this latest economic shock. Esselt Carr, BBC News.
The number of confirmed or suspected meningitis cases linked to the outbreak in Kent has fallen from 34 to 29 after some initially confirmed cases were reclassified following tests. The updated figures come after a suspected case was linked to another college in the area. Our correspondent Aruna Iyengar joins us now from Canterbury. Aruna.
Yes, here I am at the Canterbury campus at the University of Kent. Earlier this morning, from about 6:30, there was about 200 people filing into this sports centre to get their meningitis B vaccine. When I spoke to a number of them, what they said was they wanted to protect themselves, but also to protect their friends and family. Many of them are students and will be going off to their homes around the country over the Easter holidays, and so don't want to spread the infection. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has today been thanking health officials here at the University of Kent for rolling out the vaccine for this limited group of people to get the vaccine, saying that they were very well in getting it set up and rolled out so quickly. Also, the family of the young girl who died, Juliet Kenny, who was aged 18, has also called for a wider rollout of this vaccine for young people. At the moment, the vaccine is only available to babies, and that was set up in 2012. Wes Streeting is looking for a widening of this vaccination programme, but again has been thanking staff today.
Aruna, thank you very much. Aruna Iyengar in Canterbury. 7 people have died following a military helicopter crash in Qatar, according to the country's defence ministry. Qatar said the helicopter was on routine duty and had a technical malfunction. Those who died included 3 people from Turkey, one of them a soldier. Cuba has suffered another nationwide power cut as the island's energy infrastructure struggles to deal with a fuel blockade imposed by the US. Cuba's energy ministry says the power grid totally collapsed and work to restore supply has begun. This is the second time this week that a nationwide blackout has struck the island. The American basketball star LeBron James, often described as the greatest player in the game's history, has added a new record to his resume. He has now played more regular season NBA games than anyone else, 1,612. James, who is 41, was already the holder of a raft of NBA records, including most points scored. That's all from me, but there's plenty more, of course, on the BBC News website. The next news on BBC One is at 5:35. Bye for now.